I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Don't think you can persuade me with appeals to my intellectual vanity.
Nothing here is vegetarian. Bon appetit.
3 actors, 1 character, Hannibal Lecter, one of the most famous villains in narrative history. He truly is one of those characters that is more memorable than the hero. If you ask anyone who Hannibal Lecter is, they'll think of this guy.
But not today.
But many don't jump immediately to these two. Brian Cox was the first actor to portray the character in 1986's Manhunter, directed by Michael Mann, and the Danish actor Mads Mikkelsen portrayed him for 3 seasons in the mid-2010s. But who did the character the best? In this video, I'm going to break down each portrayal of the character and definitively decide who did it best. The character Hannibal Lecter is a devilish character created by Thomas Harris. He first appeared in the 1981 novel Red Dragon. The title refers to the figure from William Blake's painting The Great Red Dragon and the Woman Clothed in Sun. Protagonist Will Graham is an FBI profiler who comes out of retirement to stop the serial killer named the Tooth Fairy. In the novel, Graham turns to former psychiatrist and serial killer Hannibal to assist him in the pursuit. Graham and Lecter have a history, with Lecter almost killing Graham previously. They have a deep emotional and intellectual connection. In the book, he has a very small role, and the book did well upon its release, with horror author Stephen King praising it as probably the best popular novel to be published in America since The Godfather. And this led to the second novel in 1988, The Silence of the Lambs. Listen, a little sidebar here. Is it just me, or all these titles a little bit batshit crazy? Just a thought. I'll leave you with that. And this book used another protagonist, and maybe a character almost as famous as Lecter, in Clarence Starling. Again, she enlists the help of Lecter to help her find another serial killer, Buffalo Bill. This novel was even more of a success than the first, with fellow author Roald Dahl describing it as subtle, horrific, and splendid. The best book I have read in a long time. What followed was 2 more novels, Hannibal in 1999 and Hannibal Rising in 2006. Listen, those titles might seem a little bit derivative and money grabbing, but if I was Harris, I'd probably do the same, and so would you, so stop judging him, alright? I can see you judging him. So effectively, what you had was the first novel where Hannibal is merely just a sideman, but readers loved him, and to another novel where Harris gave the readers more of what they loved. The latter novels is where he's almost front and center and now leading the charge. And thusly, we are led to maybe the very reason why the character became popular in the first place: the movies that followed each book. Red Dragon became Manhunter, The Silence of the Lambs became, well, The Silence of the Lambs. You know, it's still such a weird title, and you're not getting away with that title nowadays, I tell you that. That title, nowadays, not happening. Hannibal became Hannibal, and then you had Red Dragon being remade as Red Dragon, and that was the last film in the series. Well, so far, at least. Although, there are talks of... You know what, I tell a lie. There is another Hannibal film, and I didn't know this until I started doing research on this video, which kind of changes the whole video, but yeah, I mean, for the purposes of this video, that film doesn't exist, so just ignore that one. Ignore it. It didn't happen. The inspiration for the character of Hannibal Lecter, it seems, comes from the serial killer Albert Fish, or Hamilton Howard Albert Fish, a serial killer who lived between 1870 and 1936. He was also known as the Grey Man, the Werewolf of Wisteria, the Brooklyn Vampire, the Moon Maniac, and the Boogeyman. Man, that's a lot of names. I thought rappers had a lot of names, but this guy's just taking the piss. Without going too much into graphic detail, he murdered at least 10 people, only confessing to 3, and once boasting that he had children in every state. I mean, this guy is just messed up. I'll let you do the research on him. Yeah, you do it. You do. I don't want to talk about him anymore. Now, in the novels, Hannibal's actually a count of Lithuanian nobility. He's intelligent, cultured, and has impeccable manners. Now, the reason why this is important is because when we break down the performances of the actors, it's very crucial to know which actor nailed the role based on the book's initial description of the character. Which nicely brings us to Manhunter is a very strange film. If you're like me, you love the work of director Michael Mann. For the most part, this director's filmography is filmed with hard-boiled crime thrillers. His film prior to this was Thief, and that film had James Caan hard-nosing his way around the town through criminal conspiracy in that lovely James Caan type of fashion.
I am the last guy in the world that you want to fuck with.
And I hadn't seen Manhunter until I had to do research for this video, always putting it off for one reason or the other. And man, this film is weird. Now, I've not read the books, but I'm assuming that in the books, the characters don't talk like they're on the set of Miami Vice. Manhunter treats his FBI protagonists like they're characters from the Michael Mann epic Heat. The screenplay was written by Mann himself, and when watching the film, that makes perfect sense, because the film is basically just a neo-noir crime thriller. Man, this film is wild. At times, it did take me out of the experience. But William Peterson is good as Will Graham. Joan Allen remains one of the greatest actors that has ever graced our screens, and one of the most underrated too. Tom Noonan as the Tooth Fairy is wild and wacky, and the great Dennis Farina is, well, Dennis Farina.
Shut up and sit down, you big bald fuck.
Overall, the film is a very 80s film, down to the synth score, the action sequences, and the dialogue. It's a good film that showed Michael Mann's promise. But as a serial killer thriller, it doesn't quite hit the mark. However, Brian Cox as Hannibal Lecter is hardly in the film. As I said, I knew nothing about the film going into it, but honestly I didn't expect Brian Cox to be in the film for just 9 minutes of the 2-hour runtime. Man, this film is mad. In those 9 minutes though, he is chilling. What Cox gets right here is the playfulness. He is very blunt, more so than the other two actors that we'll get to shortly. He is what Al Pacino was to Robert De Niro in Heat, and what Tom Cruise was to Fox in Collateral. He is a very Michael Mann reflection character. Biting, wily, brutal, and sarcastic. Brian Cox was a screen legend way before Succession, and this performance shows why the Scottish actor has been top of the game for so long. To have such an impact in just 9 minutes is brilliant, and the popularity of the character from this film led to the use of the character in even more context in the next book and in the next film. Now, this film is beyond just this character. We're talking about one of the great all-time films by one of the great all-time underrated directors, Jonathan Demme. His use of subjective POVs in this film and in a lot of his films is one of cinema's greatest feats. Clarence Starling is one of cinema's greatest characters. Jodie Foster peaked with this film. She was on the rise even before this film in Bugsy Malone and Taxi Driver, and then she won her first Oscar for The Accused in 1988. The Accused is a brilliant film. It uses the same technique as the classic Japanese film Rashomon. Now, if you've not seen The Accused, do check it out. It's really an underrated gem, and I think you'll enjoy it. It's got Jodie Foster and she won an Oscar, so, give it a little watch. This film is only the third film ever to win the Big Five at the Oscars. Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress, and Best Screenplay. The film plays more like a serial killer thriller than Manhunter. The direction is amongst the best committed to cinema ever. And whilst Sir Anthony Hopkins, prior to this film, was a very respected actor, this film pushed him onto untouchable levels. It cemented him as an all-time great and made him an untouchable forever. Because honestly, since this film, he's not really put in any performance anywhere near this performance, and he still remains one of the greats, just based on this performance. I mean, he was great in The Father, but tell me, has he been great in anything else? Great like this film? Let me know in the comments. Hopkins, in one single blow, made this character into the cultural icon that it is. He is scary, vicious, playful, and chilling. He modeled the character on the robot HAL 9000 from A Space Odyssey 2001. And you can see why. Absolutely brilliant stuff from the actor. All in just 16 minutes. And of course, as mentioned, he won an Oscar. He's part of a very elite group of just 12 actors who have won Oscars for having less than 20 minutes screen time. Video on that coming very soon. And of course, he would reprise the role twice more in Red Dragon and Hannibal. The Silence of the Lambs is the best adaptation of the series of novels by some distance. But we still have one more actor to discuss before we decide who portrayed the character best. Where to begin with this show? Well, first and foremost, it's a great show. Until season 3 and maybe even season 2, if you're being hypercritical. Season 1 is a tour de force in television making. British actor Hugh Dancy plays Will Graham, and the show takes place before the events of Red Dragon. Hannibal is an everyday psychiatrist living in his big mansion and preparing plenty of meaty food. And yes, it is what you think it is. I mean, what's the point of the show showing you him making a nice spaghetti bolognese? Obviously, it's, you know. Anyway, back to the video. Lawrence Fishburne plays the character that Dennis Farina kind of portrayed, I guess.
Shut up and sit down, you big bald fuck.
And Lawrence Fishburne hasn't been this good since The Matrix. And then we are left with the rather weird but awesome looking Mads Mikkelsen. Prior to this film, his major Hollywood breakthrough was in Casino Royale. Now, firstly, it must be said that Brian Cox has just 9 minutes and Hopkins had 17. Mikkelsen had about 36 hours in this character, and that might seem like he has an unfair advantage. Because he does. But Mikkelsen doesn't waste a second of those 36 hours. He's the most accurate two-book adaptation of the character of the three. He's just like the book says. Intelligent, cultured, and has impeccable manners. Mikkelsen's delivery of the lines is ice cold. Matter of fact. No smiling, just coldness. His face says so much, even when he's not saying anything. The man is literally just scary. I mean, not the character, the actor. The actor's scary. I'm scared. For me, Mikkelsen is one of the best actors of the past 20 years, and this show solidifies that statement. But who did the role best? Size isn't everything. Pause. It ain't. In only 9 minutes, I feel Cox brings the character to life perfectly, and he's the most playful of the three. However, it must be said that he doesn't come across as necessarily scary, and that might be due to the fact that the film isn't scary. As I said before, it's too much of a neo-noir thriller for my liking. I'm gonna give Cox a 7.5, and it's not just because Cox is in a short amount of the film, it's because he just doesn't have enough to do. The most famous portrayal, and he does the most with the least. 17 minutes screen time is nothing, but of course he appears in the other two films as well, so the screen time isn't really an issue. But I am basing my score mainly on his Oscar-winning performance in The Silence of the Lambs, and in that film he turned Lecter into one of the greatest screen villains ever. He turned the words on a page into a character that could be under your bed at night. No, there's nothing there. Nothing. Nothing behind me either. Yeah, there's no Anthony Hopkins there, so everything's okay. Anyway, back to the video. The fact he only has 17 minutes actually works in his favor. It's the Jaws effect. The less you see of danger, the more scary it can be. I'm going to give Anthony Hopkins, or Sir Anthony Hopkins, a 9. 36 hours screen time, and maybe size does matter. Pause. Unpause. Because as I said, Mads Mikkelsen doesn't waste any of that time. On a personal level, he scares me more than the other two actors. The fact that he's so hard to read and could do something incredibly kind in one moment and then something most chillingly evil in another is fascinating and jilting. And yes, that is down to the writing, but it also comes down to Mikkelsen's interpretation of the text. The mad thing is, in real life, he's just a bit of a goofy guy.
And I told my brother this Christmas because he actually got, as a present, he got the Death Star, enormous.
The Lego.
The legal one, right? Yeah. And he was fiddling for 2 hours, and then I realized, hey, give it to me. I know how this works.
A brilliant portrayal of Lecter, and he's going to get an 8 from me. Sir Anthony Hopkins is the winner. Listen, all three adaptations of the character are all brilliant in their own different kind of ways. If you've not seen any of them, watch them. But be warned, they are chilling, they are disturbing, and I wouldn't say scary to me, I'm a big boy, but they are scary to other people. So just be mindful of that. Now, Sir Anthony Hopkins is one of the greatest actors of all time, but what is good and what is bad when it comes to acting? Well, I'll tell you what, why don't you watch this video over here and you can find out all about what good and bad acting is. And in the meantime, why don't you hit the subscribe button, notification button, and like the video so that this channel can grow at a fast rate. Thank you if you've done that already. Until we speak again, big love.